So welcome everyone and good afternoon. Today's event on managing remote teams, which is part of the Suffolk Business Festival 2022. Really glad to have you here today and to be joined by Maria Banks from Strada Innovation. And just as a really quick overview before Maria gets started, the annual business festival is an opportunity for businesses to learn something new, find out what's happening in the local area and how to get involved and find out how to access local support programs. For 2022, our theme for this year's business festival is all things digital, and the events will include the launch of new digital support programs, digital tech demos and information on local digital projects and a wide range of workshops, webinars and learning seminars. All events are being held online to enable businesses to access the support and information they need more conveniently and just drop in during your working day. Recorded events, podcasts and pre-recorded webinars will all be made available throughout the 2-week period and beyond via our website esuffolkmeansbusiness.co.uk. This is one of many events scheduled today and throughout the 2-week period. So if you'd like to find out what else is happening or sign up to any other events, please visit our website, esuffolkmeansbusiness. Please note today's event is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it back later, or if you want to share it with your colleagues on networks, please do. If you'd like to ask any questions about today's event, please either submit this via the Q&A section at the bottom bar of your screens or add a question to the chat, but please make sure this is to all attendees so it doesn't get missed. You can also have the function to raise your hand, and if you do that, we'll then unmute you and you can ask a question yourself. There'll also be a short poll at the end of today's event, just so we can kind of gauge your interest in future events and activities and shape future business festivals around this. I'm now really pleased to hand over to Maria Banks, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Hello, everyone. Welcome. And yeah, thank you for joining us on the Managing Remote Teams online workshop. I think Kay has explained everything fully, thank you. And obviously, if you do have any questions, then please do use the chat and I'll do my best to answer whatever questions you may have. So without further ado, we'll get going. I know that you will have received the report this morning, or rather the workbook, with everything. There's lots more information in there based on what we'll be covering. So we're going to start, and I've got Adam helping me with all of the slides, which is wonderful. So Adam, whenever you're ready to start.
Yeah, 2 seconds, let me just find the stuff.
Okay, just while you're doing that, can you just put in the chat if you haven't received your workbook? Great.
Sorry, technology's been a little bit slow. We should be there. Okay, 2 seconds.
So just while you're doing that, I will just turn to the first page in your workbook, where it sort of gives you an overview of the programme, really. So the business scenario in particular, because stating the obvious really, but technology has made it easier for employees to work from anywhere and be productive while I was working from home. Just to let you know, I've been working online and from home since 2004, so I'm very comfortable with it. I'm just very conscious that many of you may not be. And obviously, if you have people reporting into you, then they will obviously be a little uncomfortable, given the reasons why we've had to move to working in this way. So more and more employers are offering opportunities to reduce their real estate costs and attract top talent. With the presence of coronavirus, many organisations are working from home for the first time. Thank you, Adam. So we'll get going. Lots of information at the front of your workbook, just to explain where we'll be going with this programme today. Also, this was actually a much longer programme. So rather than not be able to give you the information, additional information, what I've done is I'm going to give you a lot more information as handouts at the end of the programme. So you will receive more information about certain aspects of managing remote teams, which I will cover briefly, but you'll get full explanation once we finish the programme. Okay, thank you. Obviously, my name's Maria Banks, and we're going to get going. So, next slide, please. Or can I? Oh, you're doing it for me, are you? Do I have access, Adam?
Feel free to share if you like, Maria. I'm happy to do the slides if you like. It's whatever works for you. Is that moved over okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So to start us off, we have a definition of remote work in that it's done outside of the traditional office. So they could be working from home, people could be working from satellite offices geographically, apart from the rest of their team. Or the company might be fully remote with all employees working outside of a traditional office. Currently, I am working with a very well-known pharmaceutical company, and they're worldwide, they're global. So they are fully remote with all employees working outside of a traditional office. They do check in with each other from time to time in terms of offices. You know, they will go to their head office or they'll meet somewhere local for a team get together, but generally everybody is working away from home. Next one, please. So, is your company ready for remote working? So these are just some of the questions that come up whenever we ask this question. Are some employees already accomplishing tasks remotely? Does it make sense for some employees to shift to remote work? Do you want to keep up with your competitors? Silly question, really. Have you lost talent to remote companies? Have you outgrown your office? Do you already have technology in place to support remote teams? So these are just some of the questions that come up. And just to let you know that there is a handout as well that we'll be offering you at the end of this program in relation to some of these questions, so that you can think about them more in more detail, I guess. Yes, yeah, thank you. There are 10 management skills for remote managers that are absolutely clear. And if you look in your workbook, page 3, you'll see that all of these 10 management skills are shown with some explanation, some narrative with each one. So we're just going to go through them one by one. There are more than 10, to be fair. These are the key ones that that are really important in terms of management skills for people who are managing people remotely. So number 1, setting clear expectations. Have a look at the notes. So you can see why setting clear expectations is really key. Communicating your expectations to a remote team is ever more important now than ever before. So again, you really need to think about your communication skills, and you can never over communicate. Believe me, you can never over communicate. The times I have worked with senior managers and managers, middle managers, that have said, if I've told them once, I've told them a million times. Don't they get it? And I say to them, well, no. You can never underestimate, you know, maybe they were distracted, maybe they've misinterpreted, maybe there could be so many factors as to why they didn't get the message. We used to say in the old days, did you not get the memo? So setting clear expectations and ensuring that they, in your way, ensuring that what you have said has been clearly understood, or whatever goals you've set them is clearly understood. So not only will it ease the transition from office to remote, but it also helps all employees to stay on the same page. So number 2, treat remote team members as if they're on site. So make sure your employees have as much access to you as the ones you pass in the corridor in those days. So eat lunch across from, this is again, if they're on site, eat lunch across from and who you see at the water cooler. The water cooler is kind of a hypothetical thing that we use because there's all that, people chatting around the water cooler or the coffee machine or wherever, it could even be the photocopier, but we'll call it the water cooler. So creating a virtual water cooler dedicated to general chit chat will no one get frustrated. So this is something that you might want to think about. And when remote employees feel like they're barred from having the level of access to you that's allotted to on-site workers, they can feel distant and their work can suffer. Trust your team. So as it says in here, it's not news that consistent, honest communication is the key to success of any company. Clearly, there are going to be times when there are things that you won't be able to communicate, but being as honest and as frank as you can be is really helpful. So what you might not know is that when it comes to remote teams, trust is one other even more essential. We are going to talk about team dynamics and motivation, which will cover the remote team dynamic because it is different. It's very different. And your team might be comprised of new hires, or you might manage a team of experienced remote workers. No matter where you and your team members are located, the importance of trust you have in one another remains the same. So if you're a new manager and you are managing a remote team, setting your the scale of trust has to be even higher. Some people have said to me that that's quite difficult to do online. It can be. One-to-ones do help online if you have one-to-one sessions with each of your team. They do help enormously. And we will cover more of that as we go along. Focus on goals and not activity. So why do we say that? So when we are in this sort of transitionary period, exclusively in office employees, working to being a remote worker, it's important to manage your expectations and stay focused on the big picture. So this is really important for you. This is a real leadership skill. And it is about training yourself to worry less about what's being done on a micro level, instead concentrate on what's being accomplished. So again, when we're physically together, the micromanagement, for those of us who like attention to detail, is far easier. So this is where it gets really frustrating when you're not able to do that. However, micromanagement is not a leadership skill. So again, this is where you're stepping into your leadership as opposed to your management skill. So trusting your team and being able to not micromanage them so much, setting clear expectations, setting clear goals will really help. So if your team is meeting the goals you've set, then great. And if not, then you can look closer into what the exact aspects of that are. More often than not, it's a communication issue that can be solved with a dialogue between you both. So again, if you're having a one-to-one, what's going well? What do you need help with? Or what's not gone well? Scheduling video-based coaching. Nobody is asking you to be a coach. There are real easy coaching skills that you can train yourself. If you've had some coaching skill training, then that's great. If you haven't, then there are various books out there, but the key elements of coaching is listening and questioning. So listening at a deeper level, so you're almost listening to what they're not saying and asking the right question around that. So again, this is not a coaching skills course, but there are many out there that even online, that you can just tap into and practice some of your coaching skills. So I'm just looking at the notes there. So scheduling regular video calls can help you stay connected. And make sure you use video conferencing technology. It's great that all the platforms have really stepped up. You know, we're using Zoom today. You know, before the pandemic, Zoom wasn't like this. I think you'll all agree. So they have all stepped up. You know, there's Microsoft Teams out there. There's so many ways that we can now communicate. So hopefully this has made it easier for you, even with the presentation that we're doing today. Create a communication strategy. So managing a productive team remotely begins with a strategy for communication. Is this appropriate for your business? And if so, if you feel that it is, then if you're not yourself able to make, to create a communication strategy, then seek someone that will be able to help you with it. There are so many people to reach out to. You know, there's New Anglia Growth Hub. I'm sorry you can hear my doggy. I think I'm going to have to let her out. Hold on 1 second. I think she wants to just go out. 1 sec.
Sorry, just bear with us for 1 minute. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry about that. And this is the thing, you see, when you're online, things happen. Kids want to, want your attention. Dogs need your attention. I think she wants to go out now. Anyway, we'll carry on. So managing a communication strategy. And please remember that not all remote workers are built the same. So trial runs for communication strategies are not to be feared, because in the long run, you will be glad you took the time to adapt your means of communication to individual employees. Setting a blanket strategy can be really difficult. And the reason for that is when we get into the motivation part of this workshop, hopefully it'll become evident as to why that is, because we're all different and we all receive information differently. Connect employees' goals with yours. So the world is shifting quickly. It's a bit of an obvious statement, really, to a workplace that's more interested in learning and skills advancement than stability. Now, that might be quite a remote statement for you, but it is true. It's especially true in regard to companies with a high percentage of hybrid or remote employees. So take a personal interest in your team's learning and life goals, and while connecting them to the goals of the company. So that's not, it's not about being nosy. It is about just taking a general interest in them in terms of whatever they want to share with you. If they share with you that they love the game of tennis or they play golf, those sort of things, as long as they've shared it with you freely and willingly, there's no reason why you can't say, how's the golf going? How's the tennis going? How is the swimming going? Really checking in with them, showing interest and sharing a little bit about yourself too, that you're comfortable with sharing. So engagement and performance stays much higher when your team believes their work for your company is directly associated with their own personal goals. So wherever you can, when you find their strengths, then it's linked to their personal goals. People love doing what they love doing, and people will do what they love doing. So it will keep your remote employees from keeping a tab open to LinkedIn, looking, or what's the other one that people look at now for job searching. Use technology to build community. Building sustaining community is crucial to maintaining an engaged remote workforce. So use the technology available to you to create a space dedicated to celebrating special days. Things like employee birthdays, company milestones, months or years of service, as well as community recognition. So whether it be celebration only, shared calendar, or a celebratory newsletter, something being intentional about creating community helps to develop a corporate culture or a company culture that inspires connection. Prioritize relationships. Team building and we've got a little bit more of that coming up in terms of what you can offer to remote employees, things that you can do online with them. So team building and camaraderie important for any team. That will always be the case. And people are much more comfortable. I hear it all the time. Oh, it's great that we're back in the office again. It's great to see people. It's great to be around people. So remote teams are no exception. So the best managers really do go out of their way to form personal bonds with remote employees that we've just mentioned. And they use appropriate check-in times to ask employees about those things like families and hobbies. So it could be in the one-to-one sessions as well. Prioritizing those relationships is really a very personal thing to yourselves. There are some people who instinctively make great connections with their direct reports, and there are others who prefer to keep a certain distance. It's really, there is no rule book here. All it means is just create an environment where people can feel comfortable, can feel able to come to you even though they're not seeing you on an everyday basis. Reward achievement. This is really crucial. So when you're in an office, it's easy to give a shout out and recognize the hard work, isn't it? Because you see people and you can go over and say, oh, well done. And, if your team is scattered, not just around the country, but, around a town, for instance, operating out of different time zones even, it can be difficult to find the appropriate time. So to do so, finding a way to acknowledge a job well done is really, really important. And there's just, if you look down, there's just a few ways of, sending out a company-wide email, notifying your entire team on a work messaging service. Find your way. So the competencies required for successfully managing remote employees don't differ significantly from those on-site management roles. It's all about maintaining a strong level of communication that you're comfortable providing and gaining feedback. So asking for feedback, asking them how they feel about that, what they're thinking is really important. And, giving them the recognition that they deserve. So before we move into the next section, I'm just going to ask, are there any questions at this stage, any points of clarification, any comments at all? Please just pop them in the chat.
Nothing in the chat at the moment, Maria. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. If we could have the next slide, please. Now, some of you may have already seen this, a very generic model, the action-centered leadership approach. So it's called the John Adair, because this is on your page 6. It's called the John Adair, because that's a guy that invented it, really, leadership model. So moving into not just the management side of it now, but the leadership. How do you show leadership online? How does that work? So this is a really good model to really put it into context. So John Adair's action-centered leadership model gives you a great blueprint, really, for leadership and the management of any team, group, or organization. So it's a simple leadership management model, and it's easy to remember because it's like, the 3 circles sort of overlap. So you've got the task, the individual, and the team, and they overlap. And if you could imagine them sort of in front of you, they're quite fluid as well, depending on what's going on. So it just gives you a real opportunity. It gives you structure. And what's interesting about management for me and for the workshops that I always run is it's much easier to understand what happens next or what to do next if you have some structure. So this is I love this model because it gives a simple explanation of the main 3 responsibilities of a leader. So the model is highly effective for many organizations. I've used it many, many times, public and third sector organization alike, and can be used to ask some pertinent questions, allowing you to progress as a leader, becoming more strategic and more focused. So when you use this in your own environment, think about the aspects of performance necessary for success in your own situation. and just incorporate the local relevant factors into the model to create your own interpretation, because this will give you a very useful management and leadership framework. On the next page of your workbook, page 7, you'll see that there are those 3 elements that we really need to think about. So I'm going to ask you to just pop in the chat the first one. What do you believe, or what do you know are your responsibilities as a manager for managing the task, first of all? Just going to move to the next one, responsibilities as a manager for managing the group. Anything there? Oh, thank you, Maura. Clearly defined to our team member what we expect and when. Yeah, timeframes and roles. Yeah, great, thank you. Anything else? Responsibilities for managing each individual. How about that one? Okay. Skills and abilities. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Well, we have, you'll be pleased to know, checking in regularly and allowing their strengths to shine. Absolutely. Love that one. Thank you, Morag. Lovely. So we have a whole list for you, which Adam is now going to share, and you'll be pleased to know that you will be receiving this as one of your handouts, so you can keep it.
Okay, I'll just get this up on screen now.
Thank you, Adam.
Just check I get the right one. Hang on 2 seconds. Okay, I believe this is the one we're referring to.
That's the one. Thank you.
All right.
Great. So we'll just look at the task first of all. Have a read through those, and if you have any comment to make on any of them, or if you feel that there's 1 or 2 there that you haven't thought of or that you feel are a good idea, please just pop it in the chat. Okay. So a few there for you to be considering. They may not all apply, but again, they are there to act as a bit of a prompt, really. And then it's for you to decide whether it's appropriate for you and your organisation. So if we could just move that up, thank you. So for the group, a few more there. Thanks, Adam. I think you'll see some of the things that we've already covered are coming up in some of what we're going through now. So the next one will be the individual. Okay, great. So they're just a few, and obviously there may be ones that sort of trigger you and you think, oh, actually, that's just reminded me of something that we generally do that we haven't done. Is that appropriate, or how could we make it appropriate for a remote team member? So just a few prompts really there. This isn't a, these are just guides really. It isn't, this is what you need to do. But I think sometimes it's good to see them in, to see all of these in their respective circles so that it's clearer in terms of what's meant by each of those circles from John Adair. As I said, you will be receiving the handout for that. Okay. So we're moving on to motivation now, which is page 8 of your workbook.
2 seconds, I'll just get the presentation back up on screen.
We'll just use this opportunity to see if there's any questions or any points of clarification anybody would like to raise at this time.
I can't see anything at the moment, but obviously just keep putting your questions in the chat, everyone, and also raise your hand if you want to ask direct question as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kay.
Okay, sorry, just she's just trying to find the Zoom share button. Probably should know that by now. Okay, so is that all right? It's all okay?
Okay, so nothing yet, Adam.
Okay. There we go. Hopefully that's all okay now.
Great, thank you. Now, some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not be, but it's always a good idea, I think, to remind ourselves of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So basically, motivation is a measure of the extent to which people commit themselves to achieving goals. And those goals are the ones that need satisfying. So what this model really shows is a real fundamental basis for what motivates people. So first and foremost, we'll start with the bottom one, which is the biological and physiological needs. So the biological and physiological needs really include things like the basic needs in life. So food, drink, shelter, warmth, sex, sleep. Yes, it does include sex as well as a basic need. And what this is explaining is that we all need that. We all know, I know, when I've run these workshops face to face, in a training room, one of the things that I do first of all is to make sure that we have coffee when people arrive, a break mid-morning. Is the lunch all sorted? Are we having break in the afternoon? Because people need to have those breaks, and they need to just have a drink, maybe have something to eat, because again, energy levels can sort of peak and drop as the days go on, especially when you're just sitting listening. So always make sure that that's available, and also that there's plenty of water, and also that the room is comfortable. Maybe if we can have some fresh air coming through, things like that, it's warm enough, all those things really. So it's the basic physiological needs need to be met first of all. Once those are met, then we proceed to the next level, which is safety needs. So that's people need to feel, they need to feel secure, protected. That's why very often you know, when you do go on a training course, or even when you get on a plane, you know, they take you through the safety measures. They want you to feel safe. So many of us, if we're flying, you know, and we fly, and we have flown quite often in the past, you know, we kind of switch off. But if we didn't have that, we probably wonder why we weren't having the safety talk that they do. Similarly, you know, when you're in a training course, it's one of the first things that you get, or in a public place, they generally say, you know, the health and safety first of all. People consciously need to feel safe and protected, and also that is being covered. Within that, there's also, you know, employment law, or law limits and stability. So all of those needs need to be met. So these two are really, really important, because if these two are not met, then people can't move to the next one. So it's like a step. Each one needs to be met before you can proceed to the next step. Once we get all of those, the first two in place, then we can move to belongingness and love needs. So family, affection, relationship, work groups. This is where people start to feel comfortable and part of a team, and feeling like they're part of what's going on. And, you know, the love needs, this is on a personal level as well. Maybe not so appropriate at work, although there are statistics now to prove how many people are meeting and at work and getting married at work. So you never know. These things do happen. They've certainly happened in organizations that I've worked in. So again, belongingness and love needs, feeling a sense of belongingness is so important. And just think about yourselves, you know, whenever you've been in a situation where you don't feel part of it, or you don't feel like you're really being acknowledged or respected, you know, it's a really, you know, it's a really difficult time. So therefore, if you're not comfortable, you won't be performing very well at all. Moving onwards, esteem needs, achievement, status, responsibility, and reputation. So basically, once we have the first three in place, then we can really begin to, you know, feel that we're achieving, like, you know, our responsibility, that we feel responsible, and also that our efforts are being recognized. Our reputation is, we're gaining a good reputation. Our status, in terms of how we feel about ourselves, how comfortable we feel, is far more, you sort of grow much more in terms of yourself and your self-respect. So it's your self-esteem. And once we get to there, then we have our personal growth and fulfillment, which is what we're all aiming towards. Once we get to our personal growth and fulfillment, then we are rocketing ahead. So how are staff motivated? You know, if we're talking about this model in terms of motivation, how does this work, you know, with staff? When we're attempting to discover how to get more out of your staff, and therefore, and including yourself, need to explore other avenues which can lead to the understanding of how your staff are motivated. So believe it or not, work itself is not a motivator. It's what people expect to get out of work that they do. This is what motivates them. So these personal goals can include the following: a need to feel a sense of achievement, recognition for good work, advancement and promotion, participation in decision-making, increased responsibility, freedom to plan and organise own work, challenge and personal growth. One of the things that you will receive in your handout is, it's a little quiz. It's called Identifying Motivation. And it's just a whole bunch of questions. So there are, just looking at it now for you, there are 40 questions. There are no right or wrong answers, and you'll be able to complete this exercise to give yourself an opportunity to understand yourself better in terms of how you personally are motivated, because the results that you then conclude with will give you your strengths and so basically where you feel comfortable and where you're not so comfortable. And there are 4. So there's achievement, influence, affiliation, and security. So all of the instructions are there for you. It's very easy to complete. It's a very generic exercise. And on the back page, you've then got clues to motivation, actions to promote motivation, and actions to avoid. And I'd really encourage you to take this questionnaire exercise. And also, if you feel it's appropriate, hand it to your teams, you know, the people that report directly into you. If you're really brave and you have a boss, you can give it to them too. So it's a really useful questionnaire, and it's a good opportunity to just find out, because people are always curious about, you know, what really motivates them. Not just motivates them, but what gives them the drive. And what this does is it enables you and those that you manage, and vice versa, to understand you more, to understand where you're coming from, and also to understand where you might be motivated more in terms of your own role, and where you are probably least motivated in terms of your role, which then may lead to some development needs. So that's something that you will receive after this program, workshop. So can we have the next slide, please? Just want to move on before I ask for questions about this, because there's a lot more to the whole motivation hierarchy of needs in terms of, you know, being highly engaged, engaged, almost engaged, not engaged, and disengaged. So again, this is a really good model that shows you how important it is in each of those elements, and what the demotivators can be. So when people are not engaged or disengaged, which are the 2 that I talked about previously, security and survival. Once those are ticked off, then you really start to motivate people. So the next slide, please, Adam. So whose responsibility is it then? It's an interesting question. You'll see in your notes on page 9, it's important to accept that people are motivated in different ways, same way we all are. So it's not possible to provide specific solutions to the problems of motivation. These differences must be recognised and should form the basis of any approach you use in attempting to understand and influence motivation. So the questionnaire that I mentioned briefly will help with that. Signs of motivation could include things like, you know, when people are feeling motivated, then they've got a bit of a buzz about them. You know, they get really high, they're high performing, their results achieved, their energy, enthusiasm, and determination increases, their cooperation in overcoming problems, so they see them as challenges, and very often give their own views and their own comments, and their own ideas about what might be different. A willingness to accept responsibility and accommodate to the change that we're all experiencing right now. So they're the kind of signs of motivation that are fairly obvious. The lack of motivation, you might find poor timekeeping, high absenteeism, apathy and indifference, exaggeration of disputes, grievances that they may put forward to you, uncooperativeness, resistance to change. So at the moment, there's an awful lot of that going on. I know that from working with the companies that I'm working with, and also my one-to-one clients, especially leaders in business and business managers. You know, this is what they're having real difficulty in managing. You know, people feeling the poor timekeeping very often is that people aren't sleeping well, they're worrying, all those kind of things. Apathy and indifference because they don't really know what's going on, either at work or at home. People exaggerate, when people feel scared and that sense of loss that sometimes people can feel. It's like, oh, what on earth's happening now, and things become so much bigger, so they exaggerate things and they start to complain more than they normally would. So it's all indicated by this whole motivational theory. So there's a little bit more around it in terms of practical motivation. So what every manager must really ensure are these 4 things: making people feel valued. So, a manager must be aware of how to get people to work willingly and well to increase their individual satisfaction of their job. So making people feel valued could include these points on page 10. Regularly monitoring their work. That's not to say that you are micromanaging, as I mentioned earlier. It's really an opportunity to have a one-to-one to say, what's going well, what's not going so well, where's the struggle. Sharing an interest in whatever they hold important, as we covered earlier. Create an atmosphere of approval and cooperation. Ensure they understand the importance of their contribution to the team's objectives. So how do they feel about the team's objectives? Do they have anything to add? And by ensuring they understand the function of the organisation, where do they fit? What's valued about their contribution to the function of the company. Providing scope for development. So setting targets could be one. Provide on and off the job training. Arrange any necessary internal and external contacts. By using people to train others in the specialist skills they may have. So mentoring is a huge asset to any company. And for people who are the mentors, it gives them such a great sense of satisfaction to be able to help other people. And by restructuring or grouping tasks to use people's skills to the full. So thinking, a bit differently, a bit more, the old adage, thinking a bit more outside the box. Recognizing their achievements, so praising and communicating their successes, what they've done well. Reporting regularly on the team's progress. Regular meetings to monitor and counsel on an individual's progress towards their targets, and by explaining the company results and achievements. So that's not to say you need to be doing that every single day, but every so often it really does help to just provide, go back to that old, that we were talking about earlier, communication. And providing challenges by setting and communicating the team's objectives. By providing scope for individuals to take greatest responsibility. Training thoroughly at least one deputy, so somebody who could be your right-hand person. And also by encouraging ideas, and where practical, by allowing staff the responsibility for influencing them. So just a few pointers really to enable you to think differently and to think more focused in terms of the practical side of motivation. And listening to people and really understanding their needs is really important in relation to their job. What I'm not saying here is somebody comes to you and says, oh yeah, one of the things that I really love to do is learn a different language. Can I learn a different language online and you pay for it? It's not what I'm talking about. If that's not what's involved in the job, then obviously not. It's whatever is relevant to their job and to their future ambitions also. Development of helping them to make that next step. So we're just going to finish off around motivation with the next slide, please. Adam, oh, that hasn't come up. That's not come up very well. Never mind. It's on your page 11. So you'll see that on this page, you've got the job itself, the area where I feel good at work, which are the motivators. And then you have the environment area, which is where I feel bad about work. So things like what motivates people are achievement, recognition, challenge, responsibility, growth and development. And when these needs are satisfied, they permit individual growth and increase ability. And we looked at that on the Maslow model. Frederick Herzberg, you'll see his name at the bottom here, he said, he challenged Maslow and said, well, that's all very well. He said, but at the end of the day, what about where people work? How are they going to feel about policies and administration and working conditions and relationships, and wage and security? So, when these needs are satisfied, they eliminate dissatisfaction, but they don't motivate. Believe it or not, they don't motivate. So things like wages, people say, oh, I need a higher salary. That doesn't necessarily, it may make them feel good. It doesn't necessarily motivate them. What motivates them are everything you see on the left-hand side in reality. I'll be interested to know your thoughts on any of this. In particular, if you are aware of Maslow and Herzberg and the motivational theory, and whether you recognize it, should I say, within your own management style and skills. And for those of you who are not aware of it or have not really heard it in this way before, how do you feel about it? Do you agree or disagree or challenge any of it? There's more information on page 12. Have a look on page 12 of your workbook, and you'll see that there are motivational needs. So different people are motivated by different needs and goals throughout their lives, depending on factors such as age, experience, the strengths of the needs, and opportunities to satisfy them. So have a look at the list on page 12. So we've got the motivational needs. So in that column, everything that we covered with Maslow. So the physiological, physical needs, and then the safety, security, and structure needs, affection, relationships, and membership needs, there's recognition needs, status, reputation, importance, power needs. So power needs are really interesting because it's about the influence, their promotion, the authority that they have in their position, the politics that they have to manage and be aware of. The self-fulfillment is the very top of the triangle, which is about independence, autonomy, results, growth, creativity, and challenge. So the next two columns are indicated by high level of need shown by high interest in these areas, and also satisfied. So as you're looking across areas and activities that would meet these needs. So just some ideas for you there. So could we have the next slide, please, Adam? Thank you. And just some motivational points here in terms of what can be offered: training, coaching, guidance, and mentoring. So job development, enrichment, variety wherever possible, stability, security methods and procedures, people being clear about all of those, praise, recognition and appreciation, increased responsibility wherever that is appropriate, involvement, getting people more involved, good relationships in terms of respecting each other. We may not always agree with everybody, but we certainly need to respect everybody, even though we may have a different point of view. And imagine a management style that's appropriate to the maturity and experience of the individual. So management styles are really important. And again, it takes a different management style to manage the more junior members in relation to the more senior members of your teams and your organizations. So at this point, could we have the next slide, please, Adam?
Yeah, I just moved it forward. Is it this one or do you want the next one as well? Or?
Yeah, this one's fine. I think we covered this one already though.
Okay.
So the handouts you'll be receiving are the John Adair's Centered Leadership Management Responsibilities, as I mentioned earlier. So the three circles that we talked about and the list that was shown, that Adam showed us. Identifying motivational exercise, which you'll be able to do for yourselves and members of your team, and remote working, flexible schedule and working from home policy. Now, we didn't include this in the program because it's quite in-depth and we just didn't have time, to be perfectly fair. But what I have done is I'm going to include them as your handouts, and I've just got a couple of slides just to give you high-level indications, really, of what you will find in the handout. So if we could just have the next slide, please. Adam, thank you. So you will get some clear rules for working from home. So you haven't got this yet, so don't look for it in your workbook, but you will receive all of this in the handouts directly after this workshop. So consider what types of communication tools work best in situations like manager one-to-ones, team or hands meeting, so basically team talks, client kickoff meetings, as in, the kind of meetings that you have in the first instance with your clients, performance reviews, how are they happening online, how can you progress with those online, employee learning and development activities. So next slide, please. Collaborating and socializing. So remember, we talked about the water machine. There are tea, coffee mornings or afternoon tea. So again, I get emails now and then to sort of say, oh, can we have a coffee Zoom? Can we have a coffee afternoon tea Zoom? It's almost like, I don't know, those words in themselves sort of create a picture so that you think, oh, I'll get myself a cup of tea or I'll have a cup of coffee. So, using the words, and it sort of softens the meeting and gives everybody a chance just to feel like a little bit more relaxed. There's the virtual water cooler. So you might even want to call something the VWC, virtual water cooler, a session. Non-work related chat, which obviously is important. Get your team's game on. So again, what kind of things are your team interested in? There are games now that there are team games, team activities that you can have online. Businesses are really being quite innovative in relation to supplying and providing some team games online. So if you've got somebody in your team, or if you yourself are interested in that, then do a bit of a Google search, and you'll find that there are some very nice interactive games that don't just include a quiz, because a quiz is not everybody's thing generally. Projects for team building. Anybody, just ask if anybody's got any ideas. Projects for team building, in-person remote workspaces, charitable giving. All these things are up for consideration if you feel they would work. Compensation and benefits. So it starts to get a bit serious now. So again, perks are specific to your company, but should list anything that employees are entitled to. So again, if there are policies that you probably need to either renew or that need to be really considered in light of the current changes and working from home. So will you offer compensation for equipment needed? For example, computers, monitors, desk equipment, and how is that going to be managed? And other office related costs, e.g. electricity, which is a big one right now. And I don't need to tell you why, because obviously the media is full of the worries and concerns about the rising costs of electricity and gas. Next slide, please. So we're almost at the end of today. And I'd like you to think about what you've learned today, what you're willing to do differently, what resources you will need to enable you to achieve these changes, and further thoughts or comments that you should consider. And in your workbook, you actually have, the last page is given to you as an action plan, making change happen. And that's on page 13. So have a look and see, come up with at least 3. What have you learned today? We'd like you to just put in the chat, just one of each. What have you learned today? What are you willing to do differently? What resources, if any, do you need to enable you to achieve the changes? And any further thoughts or comments that you should consider. So we're just going to give you a few minutes, and I'll put myself on mute.
Yep, so as Adam has just demonstrated, if anyone that is on the call, if you could just kind of add your key points from the action plan to the chat, as Maria stated, and we'll go over that at the end. There's obviously still a few members with us today. Thank you. Thank you. Those I've added to the chat. Maria, I think there's a couple of comments there now available.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely. So wonderful. I like the idea of calling a meeting a virtual coffee morning. Yeah, it's interesting. As soon as you add that word coffee or tea, yeah, it takes on a different look, really. And also, I think we've got one a bit further up that says fully engage with the team members and stay relevant using different forms of communication. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'd like to say it's been really interesting, just taking you through all of these different points. Obviously, a lot more to managing remote teams than we can cover on, just the short time that we have today. But really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy days and time, to come and be on this call with us. Obviously, if there are anything that comes up after the call or once you receive the handouts, then please do come back to us and let us know. We'll get back to you with anything you might need further. But in the meantime, I'd just like to say thanks very much. And last slide, please, Adam. And thank you very much for your participation.
Well, thank you, Maria. I was just wondering if anyone's got any questions. Obviously, last opportunity to add them to the chat. Or if anyone in our audience has, or even Adam or anyone from the economic development team.
Hi, Maria, just a question for me. I think one sort of bit of feedback we've got from businesses is they're a bit nervous about, well, if teams remote work and whether the employees will be as productive at home as they are when they're in the office. I know personally, I find it quite productive working from home. I guess sort of from the comments you said today, I guess the main thing for sort of managing that productivity, I guess, would be constant communication with the employee to see how they're working. Obviously not micromanaging from a point of view, but just trying to understand them workloads. And I just wondering, any thoughts on that at all?
What, in terms of keeping the communication going?
Yeah, I guess some employers might be concerned that some employees may not be as productive at home. So I guess it's how you best manage that level of workload that the employee has when you sort of manage them remotely. I guess that would be just through some sort of the regular conversations you have with them. Would you suggest, or?
Well, it could be. Everybody's different in the sense that some people like the face-to-face online. Some people would prefer to get it written down. And both sometimes is okay. I think getting to know each and every team member is absolutely crucial. So, the motivation questionnaire is going to be really helpful. First of all, understanding what motivates people, what they like, what they don't like, what they feel comfortable or uncomfortable with is the first step for any manager, in my view. Because then you can meet the need of that individual. So it can't be, it's not one size fits all. It can't be. There are some people who prefer lots of communication and other people who don't, who feel that they're being micromanaged. So again, it's a bit of suck it and see. It's a bit of what do you feel most comfortable with? And if people don't respond straight away, so have a think about it and come back to me. Because sometimes people don't like to be put on the spot, or if they are put on the spot, they feel they're less likely to just say what the first thing comes into their head. So building a good professional relationship with each of your direct reports, which doesn't mean, getting involved in their personal lives, just having a general feel or a sense of what's happening in their life is really helpful. So for instance, somebody might be getting married soon, or worse still, somebody's just lost somebody in their family, because then it's.
Oh, I think we've lost connection to Maria there.
I think that's some good points you were saying. I guess it's about adapting the approach for the different employees. So yeah, that's very helpful response. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. Obviously, Unfortunately, we have just lost the connection to Maria at the end there. But just thank you for attending, everyone. And we'd just like to remind you that if you'd like to attend any other eSuffolk Business Festival events or watch any of our recordings, please visit our website, esuffolkmeansbusiness.co.uk. And if you have any questions for anyone within the economic development team, please contact us at economicdevelopment@esuffolk.gov.uk. And thank you again to Maria, and thank you for everyone for attending.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks all.